Hello, everybody, and welcome to VFR. Today, we are here on the ground at Friday Harbor, and we're going to be running through a quick, pretty simple check ride for the JP Logistics Cessna 152. Now, the 152 is obviously a classic airplane. It's what the actual tutorial is in for flight sim, so a lot of people have started with this plane. But the JP Logistics mod adds a bunch of stuff to this plane that we're going to talk a little bit about. And then we're just going to run through everything that you can do with the 152 where you want to be during each phase of flight on a quick little VFR circuit around Friday Harbor. So just, the goal is to familiarize ourselves with the airplane, with some of its key operating limitations, and again, so just the basic operation of this plane. So obviously the 152 is like a 172, but smaller. Two-seaters with some room for cargo in the back. Obviously, it's a high-wing configuration like the Cessna 172. And the JP Logistics mod adds a fairing wheels version too if you want to fly that. But we have the uncovered one now, pretty similar to the base sim. Now, if you are on an Xbox or you just have the regular 152, so most of this will still be applicable, broadly applicable. There are some flight model changes and some other dynamic changes, like opening the doors is not possible on the default model. But again, broadly speaking, it'll be pretty similar. So let's hop into the cockpit and get started. So welcome into the cockpit of the Cessna 152. It doesn't get much more simple than this, but we'll hide the yoke by clicking down here. Steam gauge airplane, so you've got your 6-pack here, your primary flight instruments, as well as some tools for navigating with VORs. You also have an HSI down here, all your vertical speed and clock right in the middle. Moving down, you've got the parking brake here. Your fuel gauges down here are these two small ones. Oil temperature and oil pressure here is about all the engine instruments we're going to get for this airplane. And then below we've got primer, your battery and alternator, magnetos, your start, and all your light switches and stuff like that. Throttle and mixture are here. These two, no prop control in this airplane. Also, carb heat and cabin air, cabin heat are on this panel as well with the circuit breakers. Trim down here, your elevator trim and the indication of where it is this little white strip. Now on the right seat, we have the RPM for the engine. Again, this is just going to be showing you where your RPMs are at. And then you have an ADF gauge here. So on the JP Logistics mod, we can open and close the doors. So you close and open by clicking on the latch here. And if I get over here, there. And the other thing, if you want to hide the co-pilot avatar, some people like it, some people don't, it's the speaker button there. So pressing the speaker button hides the person in the right seat. If you want them back, click the speaker in and they'll come back. We're just going to turn battery on for the moment, just so we can start to get some of this stuff going. The center console, we have some radios here. You have your Nav and Com 1 radio, Nav and Com 2 radio, and then your transponder down here. The JP Logistics mod adds a couple of things. It adds this, which is a DME. So this will tell you how far away you are from the VOR stations, and that you tune in on the Nav. The base version from the default sim doesn't have this. And then we also have an autopilot down here that's added from the mod. So if you are in the base version of the 152, you won't have those two things. Turn this on. We'll turn all our radios on. And just get started. So startup in this airplane is simplicity itself. You're going to need your throttle and mixture bound. We're going to put the mixture full forward. We're just going to open up the throttle just a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch. Make sure that we have our lights on, so nav lights on when we're in the airplane, and our beacon lights can also come on now that we're getting ready to start. And then we're going to turn the key once we make sure that we have fuel. So mixture full in, we need to open up the fuel tank here. So this is where the fuel shut-off valve. You've got, again, one position, one tank, 24 gallons on. If it's facing up towards you, it's off. So we want that on, otherwise we won't get any gas to the engine. If you're starting from cold too, we can give it a couple pumps in the primer. And then we'll turn the key. To the start position. It should roar to life. We can bring it back to both. So that is really all there is to it in the 152. Now I do want to adjust our weight a little bit. We'll fly with another pass. We'll fly with a passenger, nothing in the back, and full fuel. You'll see you're getting very close to max takeoff weight. 1,600 pounds is really it. So you don't have a ton of payload. You got about 340 pounds to work with, which is one of the challenges of using this plane. But if you're starting out with something like NeoFly or any kind of FS economy with a 152, that is an important consideration. It'll limit how much cargo you can carry. All right, so we'll come down here. Let's bring taxi lights on and pitot heat on. And we will taxi out to the runway. Wind here at Friday Harbor today, 011 at 11. So we're going to go down to runway 34, which I believe is that way. You can see the windsock that way. Park brake off and just a little bit of power to get us rolling. And as always, we will practice as if we're with people. So Friday Harbor is uncontrolled. We should tell people that we're going to be taxiing. Friday Harbor traffic, Cessna 899 Victor Foxtrot taxiing to runway 34 via Alpha. Friday Harbor. All right, so we're going to pull over to the pad real quick, do a quick run up. Just make sure the engine works. And we're just going to cycle through the magnetos since we don't have any prop controls. And basically I'm going to set about 1700 RPM with the power, with the throttle. And then we'll run through our magnetos. So coming down here, high on the RPMs. Left mag, we should see a drop. Drops below 15. We probably have a problem. Back to both. Right magneto now. And that looks good. So back to both. We make sure our transponder is on. And just for our own benefit, we're going to put in our altitude, 2,500 feet on the autopilot. We can also turn on our ADF receiver here. Friday Harbor traffic, Cessna 899 Victor Foxtrot, taking runway 34. We're going to be departing out to the north, Friday Harbor. So landing lights and strobes are now on. Let's light everything up. Mixture full rich, check that. Pitot heat on, check that. For our takeoff, we're taking off on runway 34. We're just going to maintain runway heading and climb to 2,500 feet. Now, for the takeoff, we're basically going to give it full power. And between 50 and 60 knots, we're going to look to rotate. If you are on a short field or soft field, we can use 1 notch of flaps. That's the recommended procedure for the 152. Your best rate of climb is going to, or your best angle of climb is going to be 55 knots. Your best rate is going to be 67. We'll aim for 60 knots for the climb out here. So holding on the brakes, bringing the throttle forward. That's about all I got. Here's our airspeed, 40 knots. 50. And there's 60. And the airplane wants to go flying. And that's probably the first thing you'll notice coming from if you've been flying flight sims for a while. We're going to try and pitch so that we're holding around 65 knots. If you've been flying flight sims for a while, even in other GA airplanes, the speeds in a 152 are very low. We're talking about rotating at 50 to 60 knots, which is, you know, from compared to a 737, which is almost triple that. And we're climbing through 1,500 now. Friday Harbor traffic, Cessna 899 Victor Foxtrot, is clear. Runway 24, departing out to the north, climbing through 2,000. Last call, Friday Harbor. So we're going to maintain runway heading. And again, just focusing on about 340. You can look at the HSI. You can also look at your compass up here above our face. 2,000 feet, a little bumpy. And again, just keep an eye on that speed. We don't want to get too far below 60 knots, really. And that is 2,400, so coming up on 2,500 now. All right, so we're holding 60 knots here. Just continuing that climb. Last 2,300. Gonna pass through 4,000 here. And we'll just maintain our runway heading. Making those corrections as necessary to kind of stay on 340. So that's 2,500 feet. We'll let the nose come down and level out. Our speed should come up. We can bring the throttle back just a bit. We have a little more to work with. And so I just recommend setting a power level and then starting to focus on getting the airplane set up for level flight. And the Cessna 152, so this isn't a complicated airplane. Not a lot of buttons, switches, things to do. So really, I think the virtue of that is it lets you focus on some of the basics of flying. And so we're not really going to use the autopilot today. It works the same as every other autopilot, really. But if I were, you know, when I fly the 152, what I want to really try to focus on is holding a heading, holding an altitude, and, you know, keep an eye on speed. And it's nice because it's a relatively slow airplane. Things aren't moving super fast. In a twin engine piston or even some single engine pistons, things will move a lot faster. But, and you have a lot more levers to control. You're controlling your prop, you're controlling your mixture. We're going to lean out the mixture a little bit too. But in this plane, we're not really. So, as your faux instructor, I would say, try and hold 2,500 feet. And use your trim so that you're minimizing how much you have to push and pull on the stick. You'll still have to make some small corrections. But just focus on what it takes to get this thing trimmed out to hold close to 2,500 feet. Now, various controls can make it hard, and you know, that's why it's good to experiment with. But just kind of practice holding that altitude. Another thing I like to do is, if I'm, you know, off, try and keep it within 100 feet. Right, so we're trying to keep the needle between the 6 and the 4 down here. And you're in range. The other nice thing is we've got, you know, pretty high power set, but we're not going to run away with anything. So we don't really have to worry about the speed. We just want to keep checking the speed to make sure it's still around 100. And keep checking our heading to make sure we're generally still heading, you know, around 340, 350. All right, so once you're trimmed out and feeling pretty comfortable, holding at 2,500 feet. Let's start a left-hand turn to heading 270 or due west. When we're focusing, and again, a similar thing, right? We're going to focus on the basics. So I kind of want to set just a consistent turn and focus on holding my altitude at 2,500 feet. Again, your speed shouldn't be going all over the place, but just kind of focus on what control inputs are required to make this maneuver happen and keep it here. And then just kind of gently roll out. And we'll fly due west. And then back here, reset, make sure the altitude doesn't go anywhere crazy. We'll keep it right at 2,500. Use a little trim as required. You can kind of see where this is going to. We're going to make a big circle around Friday Harbor and then come back into land. So out of the water, still making sure you're inbounds. I'm looking out the window and coming up a little high. Let's go ahead and make a left-hand turn. Aiming for heading 150, but really we just kind of want to shoot back up the channel behind us. We're just going to kind of turn ourselves around and point ourselves such that San Juan Island, which is the island Friday Harbor Airport is on, it's going to be on our right. And again, just focusing on scanning those instruments and keeping just kind of a consistent turn coming in. This puts us coming right back at the airport, which is just about perfect. And again, you can lean out the mixture as you need to. We don't have a ton of engine monitoring instruments in this airplane. So you'll be limited in how precisely you can really dial in your mixture. But you can listen to the engine and kind of listen to your speeds too, right? Listen to the instruments, listen to how it feels on the controls. This airplane's very much back to basics, but still without going all the way back to maybe World War II style instruments. Just keeping that in a little bit. And since we are VFR, all we're really trying to do is keep San Juan Island on our right. So we're going to fly basically back up this channel before descending down to come in for a landing at Friday Harbor. So while the instruments are important, also important to look outside. Adding that into your scan. One of the biggest things that sim pilots can really get into is not looking out the window. So time to start thinking about our descent back towards Friday Harbor. Basically, descent going to be pretty simple. We're going to hold power back and set our nose to set the vertical speed that we want. And we're going to richen up the mixture as we get lower. Now, the local considerations. Friday Harbor Airport's at 113 feet over the ground, so we'll aim for 1,000 feet for the pattern altitude, 1,100. And then the only other consideration is terrain on the island. We have about up to 1,100 feet out here. So we'll have to keep an eye out. If we have to bail out or do anything, we'll go left. We can start our descent. We're just going to start a gentle descent, so bring power back just a bit. And the nose should come down pretty naturally. And you could aim for something like between 500 and 1,000 feet per minute. And then the other thing is just keep an eye on the speed. We don't want it to go too far into the yellow arc. You know, in a dive, you could probably hit 120 knots. So now we're just going to keep an eye on that speed, setting a base altitude of 1,100 feet. And the airport itself is going to be right here. You can see the spit of land. The airport's just about next to it, inland. So we're going to kind of set up to fly over the bay and make a right downwind to land at the airport. So we're passing the airport now off our right. Just about to see the runway. And we're basically going to fly downwind and then loop around it to land. Now, landing in the 152, as we level off here at around 1,100, we'll bring power back in. So on downwind, we're just going to get it into configuration. We'll aim for about 80 knots. Get our first notch of flaps. Maybe first 2 notches of flaps. And then on approach, the landing fully configured stall speed, if you got full flaps, is around 43 knots. So we're going to be shooting for 45 to 50 knots for our landing. But really, again, anything between 55 and 40 will play. We don't want to go too low, but just like any other airplane, right? We want to be kind of as close to those low speeds as possible to get a short landing distance without busting it. So here, 1,100, just about a decent pattern altitude. We've got the airport off our right. We could make a traffic call, let everybody know we are in the area. Friday Harbor traffic, Cessna 889 Victor Foxtrot. We're at 1,000 feet. So we're making right downwind to land runway 34, full stop, Friday Harbor. And so now, you're going to need to pull and retrim as we get into downwind and just get ourselves in the white arc. It's going to get a little bumpy as we get slower. That's all right. We got about 80 knots here. So we'll give it the first notch of flaps. Flaps 10. Help us get a little draggier. And if that takes well, we go down flaps 20. Obviously, fixed landing gear, so no gear to worry about. And then just make sure you have the updated altimeter if you do. Right now, altimeter pretty low, 293. And we're a little tight on the airport. We could be a little farther off to the east, but that'll be all right. We'll just have to keep an eye on that as we come in. And so now we're going to have to start our base turn once we're past the airport a bit. And again, this is going to be another exercise in making sure you're descending gradually, not too fast, while also making sure your speed is still good. Again, this is a very back-to-basics airplane. At this point, we're feeling a bit high, so let's just keep it coming down. And, when in doubt, go a little longer. Give yourself more time on that final leg to get where you need to go. That's looking pretty good now. We're going to make a right-hand turn. Start coming around again. Just keep an eye on all those different variables. And then as we roll out on final, we're going to aim to be, we'll aim for about 50 knots with full flaps out. And again, we're just going to use power and the pitch of the nose to control our speed and altitude. And just try to keep an eye on the airport, keep running. We're a bit high, and that's all right. Getting bumpy here too, but just focus on lining up. Got a little bit of red. One red. That should come in. And again, especially in the JP Logistics mod, you're going to have to be a bit active on your controls. So just small adjustments to keep it coming in. That's too white, too red. Let's keep the speed coming back. Just a little bit fast. And then as an exercise here on final, if you want, just try and hold the airplane off the runway. Try and get as close as you can while holding it off the runway. It's about 50 knots there, so just get down. Just hold it off. Bounce a little bit, but it's a little bumpy. So that's gusty for 1 knot, but we're on the ground. So again, basically, you're not going to need a ton of runway to stop. So feel free to play around, especially at an airport where you have a bit of runway to mess with. And that's really it for the JP Logistics 152. Good airplane, especially for, being a starter economy plane for needle-fly, or going back to basics and trying to focus on some of the fundamentals of flying. We will taxi off here via Alpha. Friday Harbor traffic, Cessna 889 Victor Foxtrot, taxiing to parking via Alpha, Friday Harbor. Right, so on the ground mixture back, we can cut off the fuel, magnetos to off. Turn off our beacon and taxi lights. You can turn off your avionics if you would like. Parking brake on. And batteries off. So that's the JP Logistics Cessna 152. Fun little plane. Good, a good little trainer. Or starter airplane for your economy stuff. Not very complicated, but I think that's really lets you focus on some of the basics, which is kind of a nice change maybe from flying your big jets. So thank you all for coming along. If you have any questions, ideas, other planes you want to see, drop them in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe. It all helps the channel. I can't thank everybody enough for your support of the channel over the last couple years. It really has been great. So thanks for coming along. Take it easy, y'all.